When Imani Blake, a linguistics graduate working as a waitress in Los Angeles, meets Seo Jae-hyun, a billionaire Korean tech CEO, neither expects their worlds to collide in the most beautiful way. What starts as a chance encounter at an upscale restaurant becomes a journey of love, cultural discovery, and finding the courage to choose your own path. As Jae-hyun tries to impress her with Korean words he thinks she won't understand, Imani's fluent response changes everything between them. This is a story about breaking barriers, bridging cultures, and proving that true love knows no boundaries. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The kitchen of Fusion Dynasty buzzed with activity as servers rushed in and out with steaming plates of Korean-inspired dishes. Imani Blake tied her apron around her slim waist and checked her appearance in the small mirror by the staff lockers. At 26, she had the kind of beauty that didn't need much effort: warm brown skin, expressive eyes, and a smile that lit up her whole face. "Did you hear?" Maria, another waitress, grabbed Imani's arm with excitement. "Seo Jae-hyun is coming in tonight. The Seo Jae-hyun." Imani raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly is that?" Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. "Only one of the richest bachelors in Asia. He's that Korean tech CEO. You know, the one who's always in those business magazines. His family owns Seo Tech Industries. Well, he still puts his pants on one leg at a time," Imani said with a shrug. She had worked at this upscale Los Angeles restaurant long enough to know that the rich and famous were just people, often difficult people who expected special treatment. "Girl, when you see him, you'll understand," Maria fanned herself dramatically. "And he's staying in LA for a whole month on business." The restaurant manager, Mr. Peterson, clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Listen up, people. We have a VIP tonight. Mr. CEO has reserved our best table, and I want everything to be perfect. Imani, you'll be serving his table." "Why me?" Imani asked, surprised. "Because you're our best server and you don't get starstruck," Mr. Peterson replied simply. Imani nodded, though inside she felt a flutter of nervousness. Not because of who the customer was, but because she knew how these types of men looked at her, like she was just another pretty face, not someone with dreams and a college degree collecting dust. What no one at the restaurant knew was that Imani spoke fluent Korean. She had majored in linguistics at UCLA and spent a year in Busan during college. Her grandmother had always told her that knowing another person's language was like having a secret window into their soul. But Imani had learned that most people never bothered to look beyond what they expected to see. At exactly 8 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up outside. The entire staff seemed to hold their breath as the door opened. Seo Jae-hyun walked in like he owned the place, which, given his wealth, he probably could have. Imani had to admit that Maria wasn't exaggerating. Jae-hyun was striking, tall with broad shoulders, his dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, dark and intelligent, yet somehow lonely. "Good evening, Mr. Seo." Mr. Peterson greeted him with a bow. "We're honored to have you dining with us tonight." Jae-hyun nodded, barely acknowledging him. His eyes scanned the restaurant with cool detachment. He was used to this. The special treatment, the nervous smiles, people trying to impress him. "This way, please," Imani said professionally, leading him to the private corner table that had been prepared. As she handed him the menu, their fingers brushed briefly. Jae-hyun looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps. "Can I start you with something to drink?" Imani asked, maintaining her professional smile. Jae-hyun studied her for a moment longer than necessary. Then in Korean he said, "You're the most beautiful woman I've seen since arriving in this city. Maybe you'd like to join me for a drink after your shift ends." He spoke with the confidence of a man who was never refused, clearly assuming she wouldn't understand a word. Imani's expression didn't change. She tilted her head slightly, as if confused. Then in perfect Korean she replied, "You shouldn't say things like that unless you're prepared to mean them." The shock on Jae-hyun's face was priceless. His mouth actually dropped open, and for a moment he seemed at a complete loss for words. Imani continued in English. "Our chef recommends the bulgogi with kimchi fried rice. The wine list is on the last page." And with that, she turned and walked away, feeling his eyes following her every step. In the kitchen, Maria grabbed her arm. "What happened? He looked like you slapped him." Imani laughed. "Let's just say Mr. Big Shot got a little surprise." Throughout the evening, Imani served Jae-hyun with professional courtesy. He kept watching her with new interest, his earlier shock replaced by curiosity. When she brought his main course, he spoke to her in English this time. "Where did you learn to speak Korean so well?" he asked. "I studied linguistics in college. I lived in Busan for a year," she answered simply. "Most people don't surprise me," Jae-hyun said. "You did. Is that supposed to be a compliment?" Imani asked. "It is. A genuine one," he said, and for the first time that evening, his smile seemed real. When Jae-hyun finished his meal, he left a very generous tip and a business card with a handwritten note. "I'd like to continue our conversation. Please call me." Maria was practically jumping up and down. "Are you going to call him?" Imani looked at the card thoughtfully. "Probably not." "Are you crazy? He's gorgeous and rich, and probably used to getting whatever he wants," Imani replied. "Men like that don't see women like me, not really." But even as she said it, she tucked the card into her pocket. Jae-hyun couldn't stop thinking about the waitress from the restaurant. Imani. He'd looked at her name tag. In his luxury hotel suite, he paced back and forth, replaying their brief interaction. His assistant, Minho, watched him with confusion. "Sir, is everything all right? We have the meeting with Silicon Valley investors tomorrow." She spoke Korean, Minho, perfect Korean, and she shut me down completely, Jae-hyun said almost to himself. "The waitress?" Minho asked, puzzled by his boss's fixation. "Not just a waitress," Jae-hyun corrected him, "someone who surprised me." In his 31 years, few people had ever truly surprised Jae-hyun. Born into wealth and groomed from childhood to take over his father's tech empire, he had grown accustomed to people treating him with either deference or calculation. Women, especially, tended to see him as a prize to be won, access to wealth, status, and power. But the look in Imani's eyes had been different. She hadn't been impressed by him at all. "Should I have the restaurant contacted? We could offer her a job at the company," Minho suggested, always looking to solve problems. "No," Jae-hyun said sharply. "That's not... no." For the first time in years, he wanted to pursue something, someone, without using his family name or wealth as leverage. The question was, how? 3 days later, Imani was surprised to see Jae-hyun back at the restaurant, this time alone and without a reservation. The restaurant was busy, and all tables were taken. "I'm sorry, Mr. Seo," Mr. Peterson apologized profusely. "Had we known you were coming, we would have saved our best table." "It's fine," Jae-hyun said. "I'll wait." Mr. Peterson looked like he might faint at the idea of making the billionaire wait. "Perhaps we could ask another party to move." "No need," Jae-hyun insisted. "I can wait like anyone else." Imani, who was passing by with a tray of drinks, caught his eye. He nodded at her with a small smile. An hour later, as her shift was ending, Imani found Jae-hyun still waiting in the bar area, nursing a single glass of whiskey. "You're very patient," she said, stopping beside him. "When something interests me, yes," he replied. "And what interests you here? The food isn't that special." Jae-hyun smiled. "I think you know the answer to that." Imani crossed her arms. "If you're just bored and looking for entertainment while you're in town, I'm not interested." "Have dinner with me," he said. "Not here. Somewhere of your choosing." "Why?" "Because I want to know how a waitress in Los Angeles speaks better Korean than most people in Seoul." Imani considered him for a moment. "That's it? You're curious about my language skills?" "For now, yes," he answered honestly. Against her better judgment, Imani found herself intrigued. "There's a small place in Koreatown. Nothing fancy. They serve the best sundubu jjigae I've had outside of Busan." "Tomorrow night?" he asked. Imani hesitated, then nodded. "I finish at 7. The small restaurant in Koreatown was exactly as Imani had described. Nothing fancy, but authentic. The elderly Korean couple who owned it greeted Imani like family. "Imani ya, it's been too long," the woman said in Korean, hugging her warmly. "Mrs. Kim, this is my friend Jae-hyun," Imani introduced him. Mrs. Kim's eyes widened when she recognized him, but to her credit, she didn't make a fuss. She simply led them to a quiet corner table. "Are you come here often?" Jae-hyun asked, looking around at the simple decor. "Mrs. Kim reminds me of my grandmother," Imani said. "When I was homesick in Korea, I'd call my grandma every day. She's the one who encouraged me to study languages." "And your parents?" A shadow crossed Imani's face. "My mom died when I was 10. My dad left when I was young. My grandmother raised me." Jae-hyun nodded, understanding loss. "My mother died when I was 16. Car accident." "I'm sorry," Imani said softly. "My father never spoke of her after that. In our house, we didn't talk about feelings, only business, success, the family name." "Is that why you became a CEO?" Family expectations? I never considered any other path, Jae-hyun admitted. What about you? Why aren't you using your linguistics degree? Imani sighed. Reality hit. Translation jobs require connections I don't have. I applied to graduate programs, but couldn't afford them. The restaurant job was supposed to be temporary. You're too talented to be serving food, Jae-hyun said. There's nothing wrong with honest work, Imani replied, a defensive edge to her voice. That's not what I meant, he backtracked. I meant you have rare skills. You should be using them. Their food arrived, steaming bowls of spicy stew that smelled like comfort. This is amazing, Jae-hyun said after his first taste, genuinely impressed. Better than your fancy restaurant? Much better, he agreed. As they ate, they talked, really talked, about books they loved, places they'd visited, dreams they'd had as children. Jae-hyun found himself speaking more openly than he had in years. There was something about Imani that made him want to be honest. You're different than I expected, Imani admitted as they walked along the street after dinner. How so? Less arrogant, more human. Jae-hyun laughed. Is that a compliment? It is a genuine one, she echoed his words from their first meeting. When he walked her to her car, there was a moment, a pause filled with possibility. But Imani stepped back. Thank you for dinner, she said. I thought you were treating me to your favorite restaurant, he reminded her with a smile. Next time, she said, then looked surprised at her own words. So, there will be a next time? Imani got into her car. We'll see. Over the next 2 weeks, Jae-hyun found reasons to extend his stay in Los Angeles. Important meetings were rescheduled. Urgent business in Seoul was delegated to others. His father called, demanding to know why he was still in America. The West Coast expansion is more complicated than we anticipated, Jae-hyun lied smoothly, while watching Imani laugh at something across the room. They were at a small art gallery in downtown LA, one of her favorite places. He had never been like this before, canceling meetings, ignoring responsibilities, but something was happening to him, something he couldn't control. Imani, for her part, kept expecting the other shoe to drop. Men like Jae-hyun didn't seriously pursue women like her, yet here he was, day after day, asking questions about her life, her thoughts, her dreams, and actually listening to the answers. What's your favorite memory from Korea? He asked her one evening as they walked along the beach. There was this little hill behind my apartment in Busan, she said. I'd climb it every evening to watch the sunset over the harbor. One night there was this old man there, playing a traditional flute. He played every evening after that. We never spoke, just nodded to each other, but that music, it felt like it was just for me. Jae-hyun was quiet for a moment. I've lived in Seoul my whole life, and I've never taken the time to watch the sunset. That's sad, Imani said simply. It is, he agreed. I've been too busy becoming what everyone expected me to be. And what's that? Successful, powerful, cold. He said the last word quietly. Imani stopped walking and turned to face him. You're not cold. No? He reached out, hesitantly touching her cheek. What am I then? Lost, maybe, she said softly, but not cold. When he kissed her, it felt inevitable, like something that had been meant to happen from that first night in the restaurant. His lips were gentle against hers, asking rather than demanding. But when they broke apart, Imani stepped back, conflict clear in her eyes. This isn't real, she said. In a week, you'll go back to Seoul, back to your real life, and I'll still be here, serving dinner to the next billionaire. Imani, no, she cut him off. I've seen men like you before. You're interested now because I'm different, because I'm a novelty, but I'm not a souvenir you can take home from your trip to LA. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone on the beach as the sun set behind the horizon. You seem distracted, sir, Minho observed, as Jae-hyun stared out the window of his hotel suite, phone in hand. 3 days had passed since the beach, and Imani wasn't answering his calls or texts. I'm thinking about the Seoul University Scholarship Program, Jae-hyun said suddenly. Minho looked confused by the change of subject. The one your mother established before she died? Yes. How many international students do we sponsor each year? 20, I believe, for graduate studies in technology and business. I want to expand it, to include languages and translation studies, and I want it announced immediately. Minho made a note, though he looked puzzled. May I ask why the sudden interest in linguistics, sir? Jae-hyun didn't answer. Instead, he said, I need you to find out everything you can about graduate programs for translation and interpreting. The best ones. In Korea? Everywhere. Jae-hyun had never pursued a woman who walked away from him. His pride wouldn't allow it. But Imani Blake wasn't just any woman, and what he felt wasn't just pride anymore. It was something much more dangerous, something that felt strangely like hope. Imani wiped down the counter at Fusion Dynasty, trying to focus on her work and not on the man who hadn't returned to the restaurant in over a week. She told herself it was better this way. Whatever had been happening between them wasn't real, couldn't be real. "You've checked your phone 12 times in the last hour," Maria said, leaning against the bar. "Waiting for a call from Mr. Billionaire?" "No," Imani said too quickly. "And keep your voice down." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Girl, you can lie to yourself, but don't lie to me. I saw how you two looked at each other." "It doesn't matter. He's probably already back in Korea by now." "Then why do you keep checking your phone?" Imani had no good answer for that. At home that night in her small but cozy apartment, Imani called her grandmother. Just hearing Nana's voice always made her feel better. "Something's bothering you, baby girl," Nana said after just a few minutes of conversation. "I can hear it in your voice." Imani sighed. Her grandmother knew her too well. "I met someone, Nana." "Well, that doesn't sound like bad news. He's different. Not from my world." "Since when do worlds matter when hearts are involved?" Nana asked simply. "He's rich, Nana, like private jet rich and Korean, and he's going back to Seoul to run his family's company." "And," Nana pressed, "and what? We're from different planets. It would never work." Nana said. In that way that meant she thought Imani was missing something obvious. "Did I ever tell you how I met your grandfather?" "Only about 100 times," Imani smiled despite herself. "Then you remember he was a jazz musician, and my daddy was a preacher who thought jazz was the devil's music. Different worlds, baby girl. That was different. Love is always different. That's what makes it love," Nana said. "The question isn't whether you're from the same world, it's whether you're brave enough to build a new one together." After they hung up, Imani sat looking at her phone. There were 6 missed calls from Jae-hyun and several text messages she hadn't opened. With a deep breath, she finally read them. "Please talk to me. I'm still in LA. I'm not leaving yet. I understand why you walked away, but you're wrong about one thing. This is real for me." The last message had come just an hour ago. "I'll be at our bench on the beach at sunset. Please come." Imani looked at the clock. Sunset was in 45 minutes. She grabbed her keys and ran out the door. Jae-hyun sat on the wooden bench, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. He checked his watch again. He'd been sitting there for an hour already, hoping against hope that Imani would come. His phone rang. It was his father calling. Again. He declined the call. Min-ho had been urging him to return to Seoul. The board was getting restless. There were rumors about his extended absence, but for once in his life, Jae-hyun didn't care about the company or his responsibilities. He cared about the woman who had looked at him and seen something more than his wealth or power, who had seen him, Jae-hyun, the man behind the CEO title. The sun was almost touching the water now. She wasn't coming. He should have known. He stood up, brushing sand from his pants when he heard someone calling his name. "Jae-hyun!" Imani was running across the beach toward him, her hair blowing in the wind. She stopped a few feet away, catching her breath. "You came," he said, trying to keep the surprise from his voice. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "What changed your mind?" "My grandmother. She reminded me that being afraid is a poor reason to walk away from something that matters." Jae-hyun took a step closer. "And do I matter, Imani?" She looked up at him, vulnerability clear in her eyes. "More than I want to admit." He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Then talk to me. Tell me why you ran." They sat on the bench as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "All my life," Imani began, "I've been the girl who works twice as hard to get half as far. My dad left when I was 4. My mom worked 2 jobs until she got sick. When she died, Nana took me in. I got scholarships for school, worked nights to pay for my year abroad." "You've had to be strong," Jae-hyun said softly. "I've had to be realistic," she corrected. "And the reality is, men like you don't end up with women like me. Not in the real world." "Who says this isn't the real world?" he asked. "Right here, right now. Your world is in Seoul. Board meetings and billion-dollar deals. Mine is here, serving dinner to pay the rent." Jae-hyun was quiet for a moment. "What if I told you I've been thinking about stepping back from the company?" Imani looked at him in surprise. "What?" "I've never chosen anything for myself. My whole life has been planned out since I was born. School, university, the company. I never questioned it until now." "Until what?" "Until you spoke to me in Korean that night, and suddenly I felt like someone was really seeing me for the first time." Imani shook her head. I can't be the reason you walk away from your responsibilities. That's too much pressure. You're not the reason, he said. You're the wake-up call, the permission I needed to finally ask myself what I really want. And what do you want? She asked quietly. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Right now? To kiss you again, and to see where this goes without either of us running away. This time when they kissed, neither of them pulled back, and as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, it felt like a new beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jae-hyun and Imani spent every possible moment together. He showed up at the restaurant at the end of her shifts. She introduced him to her favorite hidden spots in Los Angeles, small bookstores, hole-in-the-wall cafes, the hiking trail with the best view of the city. To her surprise, Jae-hyun seemed to truly enjoy these simple pleasures. The man who had grown up in luxury found joy in street food and second-hand bookstores. You're different when you're away from work, Imani observed one afternoon as they browsed a small record shop. How so? More relaxed. You smile more. Jae-hyun picked up a vintage jazz record, examining it thoughtfully. My father says smiling too much makes you look weak in business. Your father sounds like a barrel of laughs, Imani said dryly. Jae-hyun chuckled. He wouldn't understand any of this. Being here with you, it's like I'm living someone else's life, someone happier. Is that a good thing? The best thing, he said, pulling her close for a kiss. Later that week, Jae-hyun invited Imani to his hotel suite for dinner. She had been hesitant at first. His world of luxury still made her uncomfortable, but he had promised to cook for her himself. When she arrived, she found him in the kitchen area of the suite, surrounded by ingredients and looking slightly panicked. Everything okay? She asked, trying not to laugh. I may have overestimated my cooking abilities, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. I wanted to make kimchi jjigae like my mother used to make, but Imani set down her purse and rolled up her sleeves. Let me help. Together they salvaged dinner, laughing as Jae-hyun confessed that he'd never actually cooked a meal before. Not even once, Imani asked in disbelief. We had staff for that, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. I know how that sounds. It sounds like you had a very different childhood than I did, she said, but there was no judgment in her voice. As they ate, Jae-hyun asked about her grandmother, and Imani's face lit up as she shared stories of the woman who had raised her. She sounds remarkable, Jae-hyun said. I'd like to meet her someday. The casual way he suggested a future together made Imani's heart skip a beat. After dinner, they sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. Jae-hyun seemed lost in thought, his expression serious. What's on your mind? Imani asked. I've been offered a visiting position at the Korean Cultural Center here in LA, he said, teaching business Korean to American executives. Imani sat up straight. What? When did this happen? I reached out to them last week. It would be part-time, just a few hours a week. But what about Seotech, your family's company? Jae-hyun took her hand. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about being who others expect you to be versus who you want to be. I called my father yesterday, told him I'm taking a leave of absence. How did he take it? Not well? Jae-hyun smiled wryly. There was a lot of shouting in Korean. Threats to disown me, the usual. Jae-hyun, Imani said seriously, I never wanted you to turn your life upside down for me. I'm doing it for me. He squeezed her hand. For the first time in my life, I'm making a choice that feels right. Later that night, as they lay tangled in the sheets of his bed, Imani rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Tell me something true, she whispered. Something you've never told anyone. Jae-hyun was quiet for so long that she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then he spoke, his voice barely audible. The night my mother died, I was supposed to call her to say I couldn't make it to dinner. I was preparing for a debate competition. I thought it was more important. His voice cracked slightly. I never made that call. She was driving to the restaurant to meet my father when the accident happened. Imani lifted her head to look at him. You were just a kid. It wasn't your fault. My father never said it was. He never said anything about it at all. We just moved on, buried ourselves in work. That's the Seo family way. Imani kissed him softly. It's okay to feel, Jae-hyun, to grieve, to be human. I'm learning that, he said, holding her closer. With you. 2 days later, Imani received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was an application for the Seoul National University's Master's Program in Translation and Interpreting, along with information about a full scholarship sponsored by the Seo Foundation. Anger flared inside her. She drove straight to Jae-hyun's hotel. What is this? She demanded, throwing the envelope on the coffee table as soon as he let her in. Jae-hyun looked confused. I thought you'd be happy. Here's one of the best programs in the world. Did you pull strings to get me in? Use your family name? No, of course not. I just had the information sent to you. You'd still need to apply like anyone else. But with a scholarship conveniently provided by your family's foundation? Jae-hyun ran a hand through his hair. I expanded an existing program for international students studying languages. I thought you'd want to pursue your dream. In Seoul? Imani crossed her arms. So I can follow you back to Korea like some trophy. That's not what I meant at all. Jae-hyun's voice rose in frustration. I was trying to help. I don't need your help, or your money, or your connections, Imani said, her voice shaking. Is that why you've been seeing me? So you could play savior to the poor waitress with the unused degree? How can you even think that? Jae-hyun looked genuinely hurt. After everything we've shared. Because this is exactly what I was afraid of. Imani gestured to the envelope. You thinking you can fix my life with your money. That's not what I want from you, Jae-hyun. Then what do you want? He asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. I want... Imani struggled to find the words. I want to know that what's between us is real. That it's about who we are. Not what you can give me, or what I represent to you. I don't want to be your exotic American girlfriend or your charity case. You've never been either of those things to me, Jae-hyun said, stepping closer. From that first night, you've been the woman who sees past all the trappings to the real me. Do you know how rare that is in my life? Then why this? She pointed to the scholarship information. Because I saw how your eyes lit up when you talked about translating, about building bridges between cultures. I wanted to help make that possible, but on your terms, in your world. Jae-hyun sighed. I didn't think of it that way. I'm sorry. Imani's anger began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. This is why relationships like ours are so hard, Jae-hyun. There's always going to be this imbalance. It doesn't have to be that way, doesn't it? You can change my life with a phone call. I can't do the same for you. You already have, he said softly. In ways that matter more than money or connections ever could. Imani wanted to believe him, but the fear that had been lurking since the beginning, that she was just a temporary diversion, a novelty, came rushing back. I need some time, she said finally. To think. Jae-hyun nodded, his eyes sad. I understand. As she turned to leave, he called after her. Imani, for what it's worth, I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me. She paused at the door, not looking back. That's the first thing you've said that I completely believe. Imani didn't go to work that night. She called in sick and drove to her grandmother's house in Inglewood instead. Nana took one look at her granddaughter's face and opened her arms. Come here, baby girl. They sat on the old porch swing just as they had when Imani was a little girl with skinned knees or a broken heart. He sent me scholarship information, Imani explained, after telling Nana everything, for a program in Seoul. And that upset you because, Nana prompted, because it felt like he was trying to fix me, like I'm a problem to be solved. Nana was quiet for a moment. When your grandfather wanted to buy me my first car, I refused. Told him I could save up and buy my own. That's different. Is it? I was too proud to let him help me, even though he wanted to do it because he loved me, not because he thought I needed fixing. Imani sighed. I just don't want to be someone's charity case. Did he say you were? No, but nothing. That young man is trying to find a way to be with you, to build a bridge between your worlds, and from what you've told me, he's also trying to find himself in the process. Imani leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? What if it does work? Nana countered. What if those differences are exactly what you both need? They rocked in silence for a while. He said he's falling in love with me, Imani whispered finally. And are you falling in love with him? Imani closed her eyes. I think I already fell. The next morning, Imani went to Jae-hyun's hotel, but he wasn't there. The front desk informed her that Mr. SEO had checked out early that morning. Panic seized her. Had he gone back to Korea? Had she pushed him away for good? She called his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She left a message, trying to keep her voice steady. Jae-hyun, it's me. I'm at your hotel, but they said you checked out. Please call me back. I need to talk to you. She went to the restaurant for her shift, hoping he might show up there, but there was no sign of him. Maria noticed her distraction. Trouble in paradise? She asked sympathetically. I think he went back to Korea, Imani said, the words painful to speak aloud. Without saying goodbye? That doesn't sound like the guy who came in here every night to see you. Imani's phone rang, and she nearly dropped it in her haste to answer. But it wasn't Jae-hyun, it was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Imani Blake?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Min-ho. I work for Mr. Seo. He asked me to contact you." Imani's heart raced. "Is he okay? Where is he?" "He's fine," Min-ho assured her. "He had to fly to New York for an emergency meeting with investors. He asked me to tell you he'll be back in Los Angeles tomorrow evening." Relief washed over her. "Thank you for letting me know. Also, he asked me to give you an address. He would like you to meet him there tomorrow at sunset, if possible." Min-ho gave her an address in Malibu that she didn't recognize. She wrote it down, curious. "Can you tell me what this is about?" "I'm afraid Mr. Seo asked me not to say more, just that it's important." After hanging up, Imani stared at the address. What was Jae-hyun planning? The following evening, Imani drove to Malibu, following her GPS to the address Min-ho had given her. It led her to a private road that wound up a hillside overlooking the ocean. At the end of the road was a modern house with walls of glass that reflected the setting sun. She parked and walked uncertainly to the front door. Before she could knock, it opened. Jae-hyun stood there, looking tired but happy to see her. "You came. What is this place?" she asked, stepping inside. The house was sparsely furnished but beautiful, with an open floor plan and stunning ocean views from every window. "I bought it yesterday," Jae-hyun said simply. Imani stared at him. "You bought a house? Just like that?" "I needed a place to stay." "Hotels exist for that purpose," she pointed out. Jae-hyun smiled. "Hotels are temporary. I'm not looking for temporary anymore, Imani." He led her through the house to a large terrace that faced west, where the sun was beginning to set over the Pacific. A small table was set for dinner, with candles waiting to be lit. "You were right about what you said," Jae-hyun began. "About the scholarship, about trying to fix things with money. It's what I've always done, thrown money at problems to make them go away." "I'm not a problem to be fixed," Imani said quietly. "No, you're not. You're the woman who taught me that some things can't be bought, like trust or respect." He took her hand. "Or love." "Jae-hyun, please, let me finish. I did go to New York yesterday, but not just for investors. I met with the UN Translation Department. They have an internship program for graduate students in Los Angeles." Imani's eyes widened. "The UN office here," Jae-hyun nodded. "They partner with UCLA, the same program you wanted to apply for before, but couldn't afford." "How did you know about that?" "Your grandmother told me." "You talked to my grandmother?" Imani was shocked. "Yesterday, I went to ask for her blessing." "Her blessing for what?" Jae-hyun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Imani's breath caught. "For asking you to build a life with me. Not in Seoul, or anywhere else I choose, but together, wherever that takes us." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "This is crazy," Imani whispered. "We've only known each other for a month." "I know," Jae-hyun agreed. "By any logical measure, this is too fast. But I also know that when I'm with you, I'm the person I've always wanted to be, the real me." Imani looked from the ring to his face, tears forming in her eyes. "What about your company, your family?" "The company will survive without me for a while. As for my family," he shrugged, "they'll either accept my choices or they won't. But I'm not giving you up." "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying I love you, Imani Blake. I'm saying I want to stay in Los Angeles to teach at the Korean Cultural Center, to watch you pursue your dreams. And yes, I'm asking you to marry me, not today or tomorrow, but when we're both ready." Imani's heart felt too big for her chest. This wasn't how she had imagined her life unfolding, but looking into Jae-hyun's eyes, she couldn't imagine any other path now. "I love you too," she said softly. "And yes, when we're ready, yes." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in golden light, Jae-hyun slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Your grandmother helped with the size," he explained with a smile. Imani laughed through her tears. "You really did think of everything." "Not everything," he admitted. "I have no idea what happens next." She leaned in to kiss him. "We figure it out together, in your language, in mine, or in silence." As darkness fell, they remained on the terrace, making plans for a future neither of them could have imagined just 1 month ago. The night was filled with possibilities, and for once, both of them were unafraid of what tomorrow might bring. Little did they know that tomorrow would bring challenges neither of them was prepared for. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of the Malibu house, waking Imani. For a moment, she was disoriented, until she felt Jae-hyun's arm around her waist and remembered where she was. She looked down at the ring on her finger, still hardly believing the events of the previous night. "Good morning," Jae-hyun murmured, pulling her closer. "Morning," she replied, turning to face him. "Is this real? Did we really just get engaged after knowing each other for a month?" He smiled, his eyes still heavy with sleep. "Having second thoughts already?" "No," she said honestly. "Just wondering if we're crazy." "Probably," he agreed, kissing her forehead. "But I've spent my whole life being sensible. I like crazy better." They spent the morning talking about their future, Imani's application to the UCLA graduate program that partnered with the UN, Jae-hyun's teaching position at the Korean Cultural Center, and whether they should live in the Malibu house or find something smaller, more modest. "This place is beautiful," Imani said, looking out at the ocean view, "but it feels like your world, not mine." "It could be our world," Jae-hyun suggested. "But if you'd prefer something else, we can look together. Maybe somewhere in between a billionaire's beach house and my tiny apartment." Imani laughed. Jae-hyun nodded, serious despite her teasing tone. "Whatever makes you comfortable. I want you to feel like an equal partner in this relationship, Imani. Your opinions matter as much as mine." She kissed him, touched by his understanding. "I need to go home and change before work. Will you come by the restaurant later?" "Actually," Jae-hyun said, "I was hoping you might consider quitting." Imani pulled back, frowning slightly. "Quitting? Why?" "So you can focus on your graduate school application, and because you don't need to wait tables anymore." A familiar defensiveness rose in Imani. "Because you'll take care of me financially." Jae-hyun sighed. "That came out wrong. I just meant that if you want to concentrate on your studies, you could, but if you want to keep working, of course that's your choice." Imani softened. "I know you mean well, but I need to do this my way. I've supported myself since I was 18, and that's not going to change overnight. Ring or no ring." "I understand," Jae-hyun said, though his expression suggested he didn't entirely. "I respect your independence. It's one of the things I love about you." As Imani drove to her apartment, she reflected on how different their worlds really were. To Jae-hyun, quitting a job was a simple decision. He'd never had to worry about paying rent or buying groceries, but she also recognized that he was trying to understand her perspective, which meant more than he probably realized. That evening at Fusion Dynasty, Imani was serving a large party when Mr. Peterson called her into his office. "There's someone here to see you," he said, looking uncomfortable. "He's waiting in the private dining room." "Who is it?" Imani asked, confused. He didn't give his name, but he arrived in a limousine with diplomatic plates. A shiver of apprehension ran through Imani. She made her way to the private dining room, already suspecting who might be waiting. When she opened the door, she found an older Korean man sitting rigidly at the table. His hair was silver at the temples, and he wore an impeccably tailored suit. The resemblance to Jae-hyun was unmistakable, though this man's face was harder, without the warmth that softened his son's features. "Mr. Seo," Imani said, closing the door behind her. "Miss Blake," he replied in accented but precise English. "Please sit down." Imani remained standing. "I'd prefer not to. My shift isn't over. I'm sure your employer will understand. I've compensated the restaurant generously for your time." The casual display of wealth and power, buying her time without her consent, made Imani's jaw tighten, but she sat down across from him, determined to remain calm. "How did you find me?" she asked. "Finding people is rarely difficult when you have resources," Mr. Seo said dismissively. "I came to Los Angeles as soon as I received news of my son's impulsive decision." "Which one? Staying in America, leaving the company, or proposing to me?" Mr. Seo's expression hardened further. "All of them are concerning, but the last is what brings me here tonight. I assume you're not here to welcome me to the family," Imani said dryly. "You are direct. Good. Then I will be direct as well." He placed a slim leather portfolio on the table. "Inside is a check for $1 million made out to you. It will be transferred to any account you designate. No questions asked." Imani stared at the portfolio without touching it. "And what exactly am I being paid for?" "To end this relationship with my son, to refuse his proposal, to disappear from his life." Anger flared inside Imani, hot and immediate. "You think you can buy me off? That I'd take your money and break Jae-hyun's heart?" "Everyone has a price, Miss Blake," Mr. Seo said calmly. "If the amount is insufficient, we can negotiate." "There is no amount of money that would make me hurt him like that," Imani said, her voice low but intense. "I love your son." "Love," Mr. Seo repeated the word like it was foreign to him. "A convenient emotion when one is marrying into a wealthy family. You don't know anything about me." "I know everything about you, Miss Blake." He ticked off points on his fingers. Raised by your grandmother, after your mother died of cancer. Father unknown. Scholarship to UCLA. Degree in linguistics. Failed to secure employment in your field. Currently earns $2,300 per month as a waitress. Shares a small apartment with a roommate. Outstanding student loans of $42,000. The clinical recitation of her life, reduced to financial data points, made Imani feel exposed and violated. You had me investigated. Of course. My son is heir to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Did you think we wouldn't look into someone who captured his attention so thoroughly? Imani stood up. This conversation is over. Please sit down. I'm not finished. Well, I am. Imani moved toward the door. You can keep your money and your opinions. Jae-hyun makes his own choices. Does he? Mr. Seo's voice stopped her. Or is he simply rebelling against the path that has been laid out for him? You are an exotic diversion, Miss Blake, a way for my son to assert his independence. But the novelty will fade. Those words, so close to her own fears, made Imani pause. He doesn't belong in Los Angeles teaching Korean to businessmen, Mr. Seo continued. He belongs in Seoul, running the company our family built over generations. And he knows this, deep down. If he knows that, why is he here? Imani challenged. Why did he choose to stay? Because he is confused, infatuated. But when reality sets in, when he realizes what he has given up for this fantasy, he will resent you, the woman who took him away from his destiny. Imani felt her confidence wavering. Wasn't this exactly what she had worried about? That Jae-hyun would wake up one day and regret choosing her over his family and responsibilities? If you truly love my son, Mr. Seo said, his voice softer now, almost kind, you will let him go, before you both invest more emotion in a relationship that has no future. Imani's hand was on the doorknob, but she couldn't seem to turn it. You don't know that. You don't know us. I know my son. I know our culture. I know the weight of duty and family. Mr. Seo stood up, straightening his already immaculate suit. The money is yours, whether you take my advice or not. Consider it a gesture of respect for the happiness you have given Jae-hyun, however temporary. He walked past her and opened the door himself. Good evening, Miss Blake. I hope you will think carefully about what I've said. After he left, Imani sank back into the chair, staring at the leather portfolio he had left behind. She didn't touch it, but she couldn't deny that his words had found their target, feeding the doubts that had lurked at the edges of her happiness. When Imani's shift ended, she found Jae-hyun waiting outside the restaurant, leaning against his car. The sight of him, so handsome, so clearly happy to see her, made her heart ache with conflicting emotions. There's my future wife, he said, pulling her into a hug. How was work? Imani hesitated. Should she tell him about his father's visit? About the $1 million bribe to leave him? About the seeds of doubt now growing in her mind? It was interesting, she said finally. Can we go somewhere to talk? Concern flickered across Jae-hyun's face. Of course. Is everything okay? I'm not sure, she answered honestly. They drove to a quiet beach where they had walked many times before. The night was cool and the sound of waves provided a soothing backdrop to the difficult conversation Imani knew they needed to have. Your father came to see me tonight, she said when they were seated on the sand. Jae-hyun stiffened. My father? He's in Los Angeles? He showed up at the restaurant, had me brought to the private dining room. What did he want? Jae-hyun's voice was tight with anger. What do you think? He offered me money to leave you. How much? Jae-hyun asked, his jaw clenched. Does it matter? No. I just want to know how little he thinks of my feelings. $1 million, Imani said quietly. Jae-hyun laughed bitterly. Is that all? I'm insulted on your behalf. This isn't funny, Jae-hyun. No, it's not, he agreed, his expression darkening. It's typical of him to think he can control everything and everyone with money. I'm sorry you had to experience that. He said some other things too, Imani continued, drawing patterns in the sand with her finger, about how I'm just a novelty to you, how you'll resent me when the infatuation wears off. Jae-hyun took her hand, stilling its nervous movement. Those are his fears, not mine. He doesn't understand what we have because he's never experienced it himself. But what if he's right? Imani looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. What if someday you wake up and realize you've given up too much for me? Is that what you're worried about? That I'll regret choosing you over the company? Wouldn't you? It's your family legacy, your birthright. Jae-hyun was quiet for a moment, looking out at the dark ocean. Did you know that my father never once asked me if I wanted to run the company? It was always assumed, expected. My whole life has been shaped around that assumption. But you're good at it. You were born for it. Was I? Or was I just trained for it like an animal performing tricks? Jae-hyun's voice was bitter. The truth is, I don't know who I am outside of Seotech. That's what terrifies me and excites me about this new path. For the first time, I get to find out. Imani leaned her head on his shoulder. I just don't want to be the reason you lose your family. You're not. My father's ultimatums are the reason. Jae-hyun kissed the top of her head. Besides, you're my family now too. The family I'm choosing. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves. There's something else, Imani said finally. Something I've been thinking about. What is it? The scholarship to Seoul National University. I think I want to apply. Jae-hyun looked surprised. Really? But what about UCLA? The UN program. That's still an option. But maybe your father is right about one thing. I shouldn't keep you from your world entirely. Maybe there's a middle ground. You'd consider moving to Seoul, after everything my father just did. Imani smiled softly. Not for your father, for us. So we can build a life that includes both our worlds, not just mine. Jae-hyun pulled her close, his eyes suspiciously bright. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she teased. But you're stuck with me anyway. As they walked back to the car, hand in hand, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked nearby, or the man with a camera documenting their every move. The next morning, Imani woke up in her own apartment, having declined Jae-hyun's invitation to stay at the Malibu house. After his father's visit, she needed some space to think, and Jae-hyun had respected that, even if he didn't entirely understand it. She was making coffee when her phone rang. It was Maria. Have you seen it? Maria asked without preamble. Seen what? Oh God, you haven't. Turn on your computer right now. It's all over the internet. With a sense of foreboding, Imani opened her laptop and did a quick search for Seo Jae-hyun. The results made her stomach drop. There were dozens of articles, all with variations of the same headline. Seotech heir engaged to American waitress. Some were more sensational. Billionaire's son throws away empire for cocktail server. And there were photos of her and Jae-hyun on the beach the night before, of her working at the restaurant, even old pictures from her social media accounts. One particularly invasive article had details about her family background, her financial situation, and quotes from sources close to the Seo family expressing concern about Jae-hyun's mental state. As she scrolled in horror, her phone rang again. This time, it was Jae-hyun. I'm so sorry, he said immediately. I had no idea they would do this. Your father? Imani asked, though she already knew the answer. Almost certainly. This is how he operates. He couldn't buy you off, so he's trying public humiliation. It's working, Imani said, her voice small. They're making me sound like a gold digger who seduced you for your money. No one who knows you would believe that for a second, Jae-hyun assured her, and I don't care what strangers think. Easy for you to say. You're portrayed as the poor, manipulated rich boy. I'm the scheming waitress. I'm coming over, Jae-hyun said decisively. We need to face this together. By the time he arrived, reporters had somehow found Imani's address and were gathered outside her apartment building. Jae-hyun had to push through them to get inside, ignoring their shouted questions. When Imani opened her door, he pulled her into a tight hug. Are you okay? Not really, she admitted. I just got fired. What? Why? Mr. Peterson called. Said the restaurant can't handle the media attention, and they can't have their servers becoming tabloid celebrities. She laughed without humor. So your father got what he wanted after all. I'm out of a job. Jae-hyun's expression darkened with anger. This has gone too far. I'm going to confront him. That's what he wants, Imani warned. To provoke you into doing something rash. Then what do you suggest? We can't just hide and wait for this to blow over. Imani sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. I don't know. I've never had my life splashed across the internet before. Jae-hyun sat beside her, taking her hand. I have, many times. It feels invasive and cruel, but it does pass. People will find a new story to obsess over. And in the meantime, I can't even leave my apartment without being harassed. We could go away for a while, Jae-hyun suggested. I have a place in Aspen, or we could go to Europe. Running away won't solve anything, Imani sighed, and I need to find a new job. You don't, Jae-hyun started, then stopped himself when he saw Imani's expression. Sorry, old habits. They sat in silence for a moment, both feeling the weight of this new challenge. There is another option, Jae-hyun said finally. We could face this head-on. Do an interview. Tell our story on our terms. With who? One of those tabloids? No, with someone reputable, someone who will be fair. Imani considered the idea. Would that help, or just add fuel to the fire? It might redirect the narrative. Right now they're painting you as a scheming gold digger and me as a fool. We can show them the truth, that we're two people who fell in love despite our different backgrounds, not because of them. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than hiding. Okay, Imani agreed, but I have one condition. Name it. After the interview, we deal with your father. Together. This can't continue. Jae-hyun nodded grimly. Together. 2 days later, Imani and Jae-hyun sat in the living room of the Malibu house, facing a respected journalist from a major news magazine. The interview had been arranged through Minho, who had connections in the media world. Thank you both for agreeing to this interview, the journalist Catherine Williams said as her photographer set up. I know this has been a difficult week for you. That's putting it mildly, Imani said with a rueful smile. Let's start at the beginning, Catherine suggested. How did you two meet? Jae-hyun looked at Imani, letting her take the lead. She told the story of their first encounter at the restaurant, including how he had flirted with her in Korean, not expecting her to understand. And you did understand? Catherine asked. Every word, Imani confirmed. I have a degree in linguistics from UCLA, with a specialization in Korean. I spent a year studying in Busan during college. So you're not just a waitress, Catherine noted, looking at her notes, though there would be nothing wrong if you were. I was a waitress, Imani corrected her, until I was fired because of the media attention. But yes, I also have a college degree, and was planning to pursue graduate studies in translation and interpreting. And Jae-hyun, you're the heir to Seoul Tech Industries, one of the largest technology companies in Asia. Yet you've decided to take a leave of absence. Why? Jae-hyun chose his words carefully. I've been groomed to take over the company since I was a child. It was never a choice I made for myself. Meeting Imani made me realize I wanted to explore other paths, at least for a while. So this isn't about rejecting your family or their expectations. It's about finding out who I am beyond those expectations, Jae-hyun explained. My father sees this as a betrayal, but I see it as growth. And what about the claims that your relationship is moving too quickly? You got engaged after knowing each other for only a month. Imani and Jae-hyun exchanged a glance. When you know, Imani said simply. But we're not rushing to the altar. We have time. Some might say that a waitress and a billionaire have too many differences to overcome. How do you respond to that? People are more than their jobs or their bank accounts, Jae-hyun said firmly. Imani and I connect on a deeper level. Our values, our interests, our vision for the future. And what is that vision? Imani smiled. We're still figuring that out. But it includes both of us pursuing careers we're passionate about, supporting each other's dreams, and finding a balance between our different worlds. The interview continued for 2 hours, covering everything from their first date to their hopes for the future. By the end, Catherine seemed genuinely moved by their story. One last question, she said, looking at them both. What would you like people to understand about your relationship? That it's real, Imani said without hesitation. Not a fairy tale or a scandal, but two people building something meaningful together, despite the obstacles. And that love isn't about where you come from, Jae-hyun added, but where you're going together. After Catherine and her photographer left, Imani collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained. Do you think it will help? I think it can't hurt, Jae-hyun said, sitting beside her. Catherine seemed fair, not looking for sensationalism. Now for the hard part, Imani said. Your father. Jae-hyun nodded. I called Minho while you were changing. My father is staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel. He's agreed to meet us for dinner tonight. Imani's stomach clenched with anxiety. Tonight, I'm not ready. You'll never be ready to face someone like my father, Jae-hyun said gently. But the sooner we do this, the sooner we can move forward. The private dining room at the Beverly Hills Hotel was elegantly appointed, with soft lighting and discreet service. Seo Won-tae, Jae-hyun's father, was already seated when they arrived, looking as imposing as Imani remembered. Father, Jae-hyun greeted him with a formal bow, which Won-tae acknowledged with a slight nod. Miss Blake, Won-tae said, his eyes cold as they assessed her. I see you chose not to accept my offer. I don't respond well to threats or bribes, Imani replied, meeting his gaze steadily. They sat down, an uncomfortable silence settling over the table until the waiter took their drink orders and departed. I read about your interview, Won-tae said finally, a clever move. but it won't change the fundamental problems with this situation. And what are those problems exactly? Jae-hyun asked, his voice deceptively calm. You know very well. You have responsibilities to the company, to our family name. Throwing that away for a romantic whim is childish and selfish. Is that what you think I'm doing? Being selfish? What else would you call it? You've been trained your entire life to lead Seoul Tech. Millions of people depend on the decisions you will make as CEO. And you're willing to jeopardize all of that for what? Because this woman makes you feel good? Imani felt her temper rising, but Jae-hyun placed a gentle hand on her arm, signaling that he wanted to handle this. I've never questioned your decisions, father. Not when you sent me to boarding school at 12. Not when you arranged my first engagement to the daughter of your business partner. Not when you decided which university I would attend or which position I would take in the company. Won-tae's expression remained impassive. Because you understood your duty. No, Jae-hyun corrected him. Because I wanted your approval. I wanted you to be proud of me just once, but I've finally realized that won't happen unless I become exactly like you, and that's not a price I'm willing to pay anymore. So instead you'll throw away generations of work? For what? For the chance to live my own life, to make my own choices. Won-tae turned his attention to Imani. And you? What do you hope to gain from this? Money, status, a comfortable life you couldn't achieve on your own? Before Imani could respond, Jae-hyun's hand slammed down on the table. That's enough. You will not speak to my fiancé that way. It's okay, Imani said softly. I can answer for myself. She looked directly at Won-tae. Mr. Seo, I understand your concern for your son and your company, but you're so focused on what you think he's giving up that you can't see what he's gaining, the freedom to discover who he really is, beyond the role you've assigned him. And you think you can give him that freedom? Won-tae asked skeptically. I think he's finding it for himself. I'm just lucky enough to be part of the journey. Won-tae studied her with new interest, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. You are not what I expected, Miss Blake. Few things worth having are what we expect, father, Jae-hyun said. Imani has taught me that. The waiter returned with their drinks, and an uncomfortable silence fell as they ordered their meals. When they were alone again, Won-tae spoke with a slightly softer tone. Your mother would have liked her, he said to Jae-hyun, surprising them both. She always said you needed someone who would challenge you. Jae-hyun's expression flickered with emotion at the rare mention of his mother. I wish she could have met Imani. As do I, Won-tae admitted. He took a sip of his whiskey, then set the glass down with precision. The board is concerned about your extended absence. The shareholders are asking questions. The board knew this was coming, Jae-hyun said. I've been preparing Min-ho to take over my responsibilities for months. Min-ho is capable, but he is not a CEO. No, but he is loyal and brilliant. The company will survive without me for a year. Won-tae's eyebrows rose. A year? Is that how long you intend this sabbatical to last? Jae-hyun glanced at Imani before answering. That depends on several factors. Imani is considering applying to Seoul National University for graduate studies. This clearly caught Won-tae by surprise. You would move to Seoul? He asked Imani directly. I'm considering it, she confirmed, if that's where our path leads. I see. Won-tae was quiet for a moment, reassessing the situation. And if you were to return to Seoul, Jae-hyun, would you resume your position at the company? In some capacity, perhaps. But not as your clone, father. Not as someone who sacrifices everything for business. The arrival of their food provided another brief respite from the tense conversation. As they began to eat, Won-tae seemed to come to a decision. I will call off the media, he said abruptly. The stories will stop. Thank you, Jae-hyun said, surprised by this concession. And in return, Imani asked, knowing there would be conditions. In return, you will both come to Seoul next month for your grandmother's 80th birthday, Jae-hyun. She should meet your fiancé. Jae-hyun looked stunned. You're inviting Imani to grandmother's celebration? If she is to be part of this family, she should meet its matriarch, Won-tae said matter-of-factly. Your grandmother is not as traditional as I am. She may be more accepting. Imani and Jae-hyun exchanged a look, having a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Jae-hyun nodded. We accept your invitation, father. Good. Won-tae turned his attention to his meal, as if the matter was settled. Now, tell me about this teaching position you've taken. Is it worthy of your talents? The rest of the dinner proceeded with a cautious truce. Won-tae was not warm exactly, but he listened as Jae-hyun described his work at the Korean Cultural Center and asked Imani pointed questions about her studies and career aspirations. By the end of the evening, some of the tension had eased. though Imani remained wary of this sudden change in attitude. As they were leaving the restaurant, Won-tae pulled Jae-hyun aside for a private word. Imani couldn't hear what was said, but when Jae-hyun rejoined her, his expression was troubled. "What did he say?" she asked as they walked to their car. "He said grandmother's birthday is just the beginning, that there will be many tests ahead for us both." Tests. His word, not mine. Jae-hyun opened the car door for her. "But he also said something else, something I never expected to hear from him." "What was that?" Jae-hyun's voice was quiet as he repeated his father's words. He said, "Don't make my mistakes. I lost your mother because I chose the company over her too many times." Imani reached for his hand. "That's quite an admission from him." "Yes," Jae-hyun agreed, starting the car, "which makes me wonder what his real agenda is." As they drove away from the hotel, neither of them noticed the same black sedan that had photographed them on the beach, now following at a discreet distance. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. True to Won-tae's word, the media stories about Imani and Jae-hyun disappeared almost overnight. Catherine's article was published, presenting a sympathetic portrait of their relationship that helped shift public perception. Imani applied to both Seoul National University and UCLA's graduate programs. Jae-hyun began teaching at the Korean Cultural Center 3 days a week, finding unexpected fulfillment in sharing his language and culture with others. They spent their evenings planning their trip to Seoul, with Jae-hyun teaching Imani about his family's customs and traditions. "Grandmother is very traditional," he explained one night as they sat on the terrace of the Malibu house. "But she's also the most open-minded person in my family. She was the one who encouraged my mother to pursue art, even though my father disapproved." "Will she approve of me?" Imani asked, voicing the concern that had been growing as their trip approached. "She'll love you," Jae-hyun assured her, "especially when she hears you speak Korean." "I hope so. I feel like this trip is some kind of test we have to pass." "It probably is," Jae-hyun admitted, "but we'll face it together." The night before their departure, Imani had dinner with her grandmother, who insisted on giving her granddaughter advice for meeting Jae-hyun's family. "Just be yourself, baby girl," Nana said, squeezing Imani's hand across the table. "That's who he fell in love with, not some polished version you think they want to see." "But what if they hate me? What if they convince him that I'm not good enough? Then he doesn't deserve you," Nana said simply. "But I don't think that'll happen. That young man looks at you like you hang the moon and stars." Imani smiled, comforted by her grandmother's certainty. "I wish you were coming with us." "Lord, no," Nana laughed. "I'm too old for those long flights. But you bring that boy back here when you return. I want to get to know my future grandson-in-law better." When Jae-hyun picked Imani up later that evening, he noticed her quiet mood. "Everything okay with your grandmother?" he asked as they drove back to the Malibu house, where they would spend their last night before the early morning flight. "She's fine. Just made me promise to bring you back for Sunday dinner when we return." Jae-hyun smiled. "I'd like that." As they turned onto the private road leading to the house, Imani noticed something odd. "The lights are on." "Did you leave them on this morning?" "No." Jae-hyun frowned, slowing the car. "Minho has a key, but he's already in Seoul preparing for our arrival." They approached cautiously. There was an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway, a sleek black sedan. "Wait here," Jae-hyun said, putting the car in park. "Not a chance," Imani replied, already opening her door. They walked to the front door together, Jae-hyun entering the security code with tension evident in his shoulders. The door swung open to reveal a woman sitting comfortably in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand. She was strikingly beautiful, with long dark hair and elegant features. When she saw them, she stood up, smoothing her designer dress. "Hello, Jae-hyun," she said in Korean. "It's been a long time." Jae-hyun had gone rigid beside Imani. When he spoke, his voice was cold, in a way Imani had never heard before. "What are you doing here, Ji-yeon?" The woman smiled, her eyes calculating as they moved from Jae-hyun to Imani. "Is that any way to greet your ex-fiancé? Especially when I've come all this way to warn you." "Warn me about what?" Jae-hyun demanded. Ji-yeon took a sip of her wine before answering. "About your father's real plan, and about the fact that your beloved grandmother isn't just inviting you home for her birthday." Her smile turned predatory as she delivered her bombshell. "She's dying, Jae-hyun. Lung cancer. She has 3 months at most, and her last wish is to see you take your rightful place as head of the company before she goes." Imani felt Jae-hyun's hand tighten around hers as the news hit him like a physical blow. And in that moment, she knew their fragile happiness was about to be tested in ways neither of them had anticipated. The living room of the Malibu house felt suddenly small and airless. Jae-hyun stared at Ji-yeon, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You're lying," he said finally. "Grandmother was fine when I spoke to her last week." Ji-yeon set her wineglass down and crossed her arms. "Do you really think I would lie about something like this? The family has been keeping it from you because they didn't want to force you to come home. But I thought you deserved to know the truth before you arrived." Imani squeezed Jae-hyun's hand, feeling him tremble slightly. "How do you know this?" she asked Ji-yeon directly. Ji-yeon's eyes flickered to Imani, assessing her as if seeing a rival for the first time. "My father is on the board of Seotech. He was informed when your father updated key executives." She turned back to Jae-hyun. "The official story is that she's having minor health issues. Only the inner circle knows how serious it is." Jae-hyun moved to the phone, dialing quickly. "I'm calling Minho. He'll know if this is true." As he stepped into the next room to make the call, Imani found herself alone with Ji-yeon. The Korean woman looked around the house with a critical eye. "So this is where he's been hiding," she said in perfect English, "playing house by the beach while his family falls apart." "He hasn't been hiding," Imani replied evenly. "He's been living his life on his own terms for the first time." Ji-yeon laughed, the sound lacking any real humor. "Is that what you tell yourself? That you've liberated him from his family obligations?" "I don't tell myself anything. Jae-hyun makes his own choices. For now," Ji-yeon said with a knowing smile. "But when he's faced with his grandmother's dying wish, when the full weight of family expectation comes down on him, we'll see how strong his newfound independence really is." Before Imani could respond, Jae-hyun returned, his face pale. "It's true," he said quietly. "Minho confirmed it. Grandmother has stage 4 lung cancer. The doctors have given her 3 months, maybe less." Imani went to him immediately, wrapping her arms around him. "I'm so sorry." Ji-yeon watched them with calculating eyes. "Your flight is tomorrow morning, yes? I'm on the same one, first class, I assume." "Why are you really here, Ji-yeon?" Jae-hyun asked, his voice hardening. "You could have called with this news. You didn't need to break into our home." "I didn't break in. The security code is still your mother's birthday." Ji-yeon picked up her purse, an expensive designer bag that probably cost more than Imani's car. "And I came because I wanted to see for myself what, or who, was keeping you in America." Her eyes raked over Imani in a way that made her feel like she was being found lacking. "Now I understand. She's very different from what your family expected." "You should go," Jae-hyun said firmly. Ji-yeon nodded, moving toward the door with elegant grace. "I'll see you on the flight tomorrow. We can catch up properly then." At the door she paused. "Oh, and Jae-hyun, your father has already started the transition process. The board is prepared to vote you in as CEO immediately upon your return. It's what your grandmother wants to see before she dies." After she left, Jae-hyun sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Imani sat beside him, waiting for him to speak. "I can't believe they kept this from me," he said finally. "My own grandmother dying and no one told me." "They were probably trying to protect you," Imani suggested gently. "Or manipulate me," Jae-hyun countered. "This changes everything, Imani." "I know," she said, though the words hurt to say. She had known from the beginning that something would eventually pull Jae-hyun back to his world. She just hadn't expected it to happen so soon, or in such a devastating way. "If grandmother's last wish is to see me take over the company," Jae-hyun trailed off, conflict clear in his eyes, "then you have to honor that," Imani finished for him. "What about us? Our plans?" Imani took his hands in hers. "One step at a time. First we go to Seoul. We see your grandmother. Then we figure out the rest together." Jae-hyun pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I don't want to lose you." "You won't," Imani promised, though a part of her wondered if she could keep that promise when faced with the full force of Jae-hyun's family and legacy. That night, as they lay in bed, neither of them sleeping, Jae-hyun spoke into the darkness. "Tell me about your favorite place in Seoul." Imani smiled, grateful for the distraction. "There's a small tea house near Bukchon Hanok village. It's in an old traditional house with a garden in the back. I used to go there to study when I lived in Seoul. The owner was an old woman who would always save the corner table for me." "I'd like to go there with you," Jae-hyun said, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "We will," Imani promised. "And you can show me your favorite places too." "Most of my memories of Seoul are of office buildings and conference rooms," Jae-hyun admitted. "I never took the time to really experience the city." "Then we'll discover it together," Imani said. "No matter what happens with your family or the company." But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Imani couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was about to face its greatest test yet. The flight to Seoul was long and uncomfortable, despite the luxurious first-class accommodations. Ji-yeon was seated across the aisle from them, her presence a constant reminder of the challenges that awaited in Korea. "She was my father's choice," Jae-hyun explained quietly as Ji-yeon chatted with a flight attendant. "We were engaged for 6 months, 3 years ago, a business arrangement between families." "What happened?" Imani asked. "I called it off when I discovered she was having an affair with her personal trainer." Jae-hyun's voice was matter-of-fact. "She didn't care about me. She wanted the CO name and fortune. And now she probably sees an opportunity. With grandmother ill and the CEO position open, her father will be pushing for a reconciliation." Imani glanced at Ji-yeon, who was watching them with undisguised interest. "She's very beautiful and very calculating," Jae-hyun added. "Don't let her get to you." But it was hard not to feel intimidated. Ji-yeon exuded wealth and sophistication, from her perfectly styled hair to her designer clothes. She spoke flawless English, moved with practiced grace, and clearly knew every nuance of the world Jae-hyun came from, a world that remained largely foreign to Imani. When they landed in Seoul, a sleek black car was waiting to take them to the Seo family compound in the exclusive Hanam-dong district. Jae-hyun's childhood home was a modern mansion set behind high walls, with manicured gardens and a view of the Han River. As they pulled through the gates, Imani felt her anxiety rising. This was Jae-hyun's territory, where he was not just a man but the heir to an empire. A line of staff bowed as they entered the house. Jae-hyun greeted them in Korean, introducing Imani, who bowed and thanked them in their language. The surprise and approval on their faces gave her a small boost of confidence. Won-tae was waiting in the grand living room, standing by a wall of windows that overlooked the city. He turned as they entered, his face grave. "You know about your grandmother?" he said without preamble. "Yes," Jae-hyun replied. "No thanks to you. Were you planning to tell me before we arrived, or were you going to let me discover it for myself?" "I was protecting you," Won-tae said, echoing what Imani had suggested, "and giving you time to enjoy your freedom before reality intruded." "Where is she?" Jae-hyun asked, ignoring the jab. "In her suite. The doctors are with her now. You can see her in an hour." Won-tae's eyes moved to Imani. "Miss Blake, welcome to our home." "Thank you for having me, Mr. Seo," Imani replied formally. "Mrs. Park will show you to your room," Won-tae said, gesturing to an elderly housekeeper who had appeared silently. "I need to speak with my son alone." Jae-hyun squeezed Imani's hand. "I'll come find you as soon as I'm done." Imani followed Mrs. Park up a grand staircase, feeling the weight of Won-tae's disapproval following her. The housekeeper led her to a beautiful guest room, with a private bathroom and a balcony overlooking the garden. "Thank you," Imani said in Korean. "The room is lovely." Mrs. Park looked surprised, then pleased. "You speak Korean very well, miss." "Not as well as I'd like," Imani replied humbly. "I studied in Busan for a year." The older woman nodded approvingly. "The young master needs someone who understands our ways. His last fiancée—" She stopped herself, looking embarrassed. "Forgive me. It's not my place to speak of such things." "It's all right," Imani assured her. "I know about Ji-yeon." Mrs. Park's expression soured slightly. "She is also here, in the East Wing." "She's staying in the house?" Imani asked, surprised. "Her father is a close business associate of Mr. Seo. It would be impolite to refuse her accommodation when she has come so far." Mrs. Park's diplomatic words couldn't quite hide her disapproval. After Mrs. Park left, Imani unpacked her suitcase, hanging her clothes in the spacious closet. She had brought her best outfits, but they seemed woefully inadequate for this setting. Even the dress she had selected for meeting Jae-hyun's grandmother, the most expensive she owned, now seemed simple and plain compared to the luxury surrounding her. An hour later, Jae-hyun knocked on her door. His face was drawn with worry. "How was your talk with your father?" Imani asked. "About what you'd expect. The board is meeting tomorrow. They want to vote me in as CEO immediately." He ran a hand through his hair. "Grandmother is awake. She wants to see me. Us. Now?" Imani felt panic rising. She wasn't prepared. "She's having a good day. The doctors say her energy fluctuates. We should go while she's feeling strong." Imani nodded, quickly checking her appearance in the mirror. "Do I look okay?" Jae-hyun's expression softened. "You look beautiful. Grandmother will love you." They walked together to the east wing of the house, where the family matriarch had her private suite. Jae-hyun knocked softly on an ornate wooden door. "Enter," called a surprisingly strong voice. The room beyond was spacious and elegant, with traditional Korean furniture mixed with modern comforts. Seated in a chair by the window was an elderly woman, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her posture still straight despite her illness. "Grandmother," Jae-hyun said, his voice thick with emotion. The old woman's face lit up. "Jae-hyun, my boy, come here." He crossed the room quickly, kneeling beside her chair and taking her hands in his. They spoke rapidly in Korean, too fast for Imani to follow completely, though she caught phrases about his health, the company, and how much his grandmother had missed him. After a few minutes, the old woman's gaze shifted to Imani, who stood nervously by the door. "And this must be the young woman who has captured my grandson's heart," she said, switching to English. "Come closer, child. Let me see you." Imani approached and bowed deeply, as Jae-hyun had instructed her. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Seo." "Such beautiful manners," the old woman commented, pleased. "And I hear you speak our language as well." "Yes, grandmother," Imani replied in Korean. "Though not as well as I should. Better than many who were born here," Mrs. Seo said with a smile. She patted the chair beside her. "Sit. Tell me how you met my stubborn grandson." For the next hour, Imani found herself engaged in a surprisingly warm conversation with Jae-hyun's grandmother. The elderly woman was sharp and perceptive, asking thoughtful questions about Imani's background, her studies, and her relationship with Jae-hyun. "My grandson tells me you challenged him from the first moment," Mrs. Seo said with amusement. "Not many people dare to do that." "It wasn't a challenge," Imani clarified. "Just honesty. Exactly what he needed," the old woman nodded approvingly. "Too many people in his life say only what they think he wants to hear." As the visit continued, Imani began to relax. Whatever she had expected from the Seo family matriarch, it wasn't this warmth and genuine interest. When Mrs. Seo finally showed signs of tiring, Jae-hyun suggested they should let her rest. "Yes, go," the old woman agreed. "But come back tomorrow, both of you. We have much more to talk about." As they were leaving, Mrs. Seo called Imani back. "A moment alone, if you please." Jae-hyun looked concerned, but his grandmother waved him away. "Go, I won't bite her." When they were alone, Mrs. Seo's expression grew serious. "You love my grandson." It wasn't a question, but Imani answered anyway. "Yes, very much. Enough to let him go, if that was best for him." The question struck at Imani's deepest fear. If that was truly what he wanted. Yes. Mrs. Seo studied her face carefully. "Good. Love without possession is the only kind worth having." She reached out to touch Imani's hand. "My son, Jae-hyun's father, thinks love is a weakness, a distraction from duty. He is wrong. Jae-hyun told me about his mother," Imani said softly. "How his father chose the company over her, and lost her forever," Mrs. Seo confirmed sadly. "A mistake I don't want my grandson to repeat." She squeezed Imani's hand. "Whatever happens in the coming days, remember this. True strength isn't found in power or wealth. It's found in knowing your own heart." Imani nodded, touched by the unexpected wisdom. "Thank you. Now go," Mrs. Seo said, leaning back in her chair. "And send that handsome grandson of mine back to me. I have a few things to say to him as well." The dinner that evening was a tense affair. Wontae sat at the head of the table, with Jae-hyun at the other end. Imani was seated beside Jae-hyun, while Ji-yeon sat opposite her next to Wontae, a seating arrangement that made the elder Seo's preferences clear. The conversation was conducted primarily in English, out of courtesy to Imani, though Ji-yeon occasionally slipped into rapid Korean when addressing Wontae directly, excluding Imani from those exchanges. "The board is very eager to formalize your position tomorrow," Wontae said to Jae-hyun as servants cleared the soup course. "Chairman Park has delayed his trip to Singapore to be present for the vote. Chairman Park is Ji-yeon's father," Jae-hyun explained to Imani. "He controls the second largest block of shares in the company. After the Seo family, of course," Ji-yeon added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Our families have been business partners for 3 generations. The transition needs to be smooth," Wontae continued. "The markets are watching closely. Any sign of hesitation or uncertainty could affect stock prices." "I understand," Jae-hyun said, his tone neutral, "but I haven't agreed to anything yet." Wontae's expression darkened. "Your grandmother's health is failing, Jae-hyun. Her final wish is to see you take your rightful place before she—" He stopped, unable to say the words. "I know," Jae-hyun said more gently, "and I will speak with her about it tomorrow." "What is there to speak about?" Wontae demanded. "This is your duty. Your destiny, perhaps," Jae-hyun acknowledged. "But if I do take on the role, it will be on my terms." Ji-yeon leaned forward. "What terms?" The board has certain expectations for the new CEO. I'm sure they do, Jae-hyun replied coolly. But if I'm to lead the company, some things will need to change. The conversation shifted to business matters, with Won-tae and Ji-yeon double-teaming Jae-hyun with questions about his vision for the company, his plans for expansion, and his strategy for competing with American tech giants. Imani remained silent, feeling increasingly out of place as the discussion moved further into territory she knew nothing about. "And what does your fiancé think of all this?" Ji-yeon asked suddenly, turning to Imani with a predatory smile. As the future wife of a CEO, she must have opinions on these matters. All eyes turned to Imani, who felt like a spotlight had suddenly been trained on her. "I think," she said carefully, "that Jae-hyun should make the decision that brings him the most fulfillment, not just the most profit." Ji-yeon laughed lightly. "How American. In Korea, family duty comes before personal fulfillment." "Not always," Imani countered, thinking of Mrs. Seo's words. "Sometimes the greatest duty is to be true to yourself." "Well said," Jae-hyun supported her, taking her hand under the table. "Idealism has its place," Won-tae said dismissively, "but it doesn't build empires." After dinner, Jae-hyun and Imani escaped to the garden, needing a break from the tension inside. "I'm sorry about that," Jae-hyun said, as they walked along a stone path illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. "Dinner with my father is always an ordeal." "It's fine," Imani assured him. "But I felt a bit like I was watching a tennis match where all the players were speaking a different language. And I don't mean Korean," Jae-hyun smiled, "the language of corporate politics. I grew up with it." "Ji-yeon seems very fluent in it," Imani observed. "She was groomed for it just like I was." Jae-hyun stopped by a small pond, watching koi fish swim lazily beneath floating lanterns. "Our fathers always intended us to marry and unite the two most powerful families in Korean tech. And now? Now my father still hopes for the same outcome. Ji-yeon's presence here isn't a coincidence." Imani leaned against a stone railing, looking out at the garden. "Your grandmother is nothing like I expected." "She's remarkable," Jae-hyun agreed. "The real strength in our family, though my father would never admit it. She was the one who encouraged my mother's painting, even when my father thought it was a waste of time." "She asked me if I loved you enough to let you go," Imani said quietly. Jae-hyun turned to her sharply. "What? When?" "After you left the room. She wanted to speak to me alone." "And what did you say?" "I said yes, if that was truly what you wanted." Jae-hyun pulled her into his arms. "That's not what I want. Not now, not ever. But if taking over the company is what you need to do for your grandmother, then we'll figure it out together," Jae-hyun insisted. "I'm not choosing between you and my family, Imani. I refuse to make the same mistake my father made." But even as he said the words, both of them knew that the choice might not be theirs to make. The next morning, Jae-hyun was summoned to his father's office for an early meeting before the board convened. Imani went to visit Mrs. Seo again, finding the elderly woman seated in the garden despite the cool morning air. "The doctors say I should stay inside," Mrs. Seo confided with a mischievous smile. "But what's the point of living longer if you can't enjoy the fresh air?" Imani laughed, settling into the chair beside her. "My grandmother says the same thing about eating spicy food. The doctors tell her to avoid it, but she says life's too short for bland meals. A wise woman, your grandmother. I'd like to meet her someday." "She'd like that too," Imani said, though she wondered if such a meeting would ever be possible given Mrs. Seo's health. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching birds flit among the carefully pruned trees. "Jae-hyun told me about his meeting with the board today," Imani said finally, "about your wish to see him take over as CEO." Mrs. Seo sighed. "That's my son's interpretation. My wish is to see Jae-hyun happy and fulfilled before I die. If that means running the company, so be it. If it means something else entirely," she shrugged delicately. Imani stared at her in surprise. "You don't care if he takes over the company. I care that he makes the choice freely, not out of obligation or guilt." Mrs. Seo's eyes, though tired, were sharp and clear. "My son never understood that. He saw duty as a burden to be carried, not a choice to be embraced. Have you told Jae-hyun this?" "I will. Today, before the board meeting." Mrs. Seo reached out to pat Imani's hand. "You've given my grandson something precious, young woman, the courage to question the path laid out for him. Don't underestimate what a gift that is." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a nurse, who insisted it was time for Mrs. Seo's medication. As Imani rose to leave, the elderly woman caught her wrist. Whatever he decides today, Mrs. Seo said quietly, stand by him. He'll need your strength. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. At noon, Jae-hyun went to see his grandmother, staying for over an hour. When he emerged from her suite, his expression was unreadable. What happened? Imani asked when he found her in their room, where she had been nervously waiting. She told me she doesn't care about the company, Jae-hyun said, his voice tinged with wonder. All these years, I thought I was fulfilling her expectations by following in my father's footsteps. But she said her only expectation was that I would find my own path, not simply walk the one chosen for me. So what will you do? Jae-hyun sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands through his hair. I don't know yet, but I'm going to the board meeting. I have something to say to them. Do you want me to come with you? He shook his head. This is something I need to do alone, but afterwards, he looked up at her, his eyes filled with determination. Afterwards, I want to show you Seoul, the real Seoul, not just the inside of this house. At 1:30, Jae-hyun left for the Seotech headquarters in the heart of Seoul's financial district. Imani tried to distract herself by exploring the gardens, but her mind kept returning to the board meeting and what Jae-hyun might be saying. She was sitting by the koi pond when Ji-yeon found her. Enjoying your stay? Ji-yeon asked, settling gracefully onto the bench beside Imani. Your home is beautiful, Imani replied neutrally. Not my home. Not yet, anyway. Ji-yeon smoothed her skirt, an expensive designer piece that probably cost more than Imani's entire wardrobe, though I expect that will change soon. What do you mean? When Jae-hyun accepts the CEO position, certain arrangements will be expected. The board is very traditional. They'll want him to have a suitable partner, someone who understands the business world. Someone like you, Imani said flatly. Precisely. Ji-yeon smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. You seem like a nice girl, Imani, and I'm sure your romance with Jae-hyun has been very sweet, but surely you must see that it can't last. He belongs here in Seoul, running his family's company, and you belong, well, wherever it is you came from. Imani felt her temper rising but kept her voice steady. I think Jae-hyun is capable of deciding where he belongs and who he belongs with. Is he? Ji-yeon countered. Or is he just rebelling against his father's control, playing at independence while he figures out what he really wants? These doubts, so similar to Imani's own, stung sharply. You don't know him. I've known him since we were children, Ji-yeon corrected her. I know the world he comes from, the pressures he faces. Can you say the same? Before Imani could respond, a staff member approached, bowing politely. Miss Blake, there's a phone call for you, from America. Grateful for the interruption, Imani excused herself and followed the staff member to a study where a phone lay off the hook. Hello? Baby girl, it's Nana. Her grandmother's voice was a welcome comfort. Nana, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just checking on my granddaughter in a foreign land. How are things going? Imani sank into a chair, suddenly overwhelmed by homesickness. It's complicated. Jae-hyun's grandmother is dying. His father wants him to take over the company. And his ex-fiancée is here, making it very clear she thinks I don't belong in his world. And what do you think? Nana asked calmly. I don't know anymore, Imani admitted. I love him, Nana, but seeing him here, in his element, I wonder if I'm just delaying the inevitable. The inevitable what? Him realizing that our worlds are too different, that I can never be the kind of partner he needs in this life. Nana was quiet for a moment. Let me tell you something about love, baby girl. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's world. It creates a new world big enough for both of you. But what if that's not possible? What if some differences are too big to bridge? Then you'll know you tried, Nana said simply. But don't you dare give up without fighting for what you want. That's not how I raised you. Imani smiled despite her tears. I miss you, Nana. I miss you too. Now go find that young man of yours and remind him why he fell in love with you in the first place. After hanging up, Imani wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Nana was right. She hadn't come all this way to give up at the first sign of trouble. She went to her room and changed into the nicest outfit she had brought, a simple but elegant blue dress that Jae-hyun had once said brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. She was going to meet him after the board meeting, and she wanted to look her best, not for his family or the company executives, but for herself. As she was putting the finishing touches on her makeup, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found Mrs. Park, the housekeeper, looking troubled. Miss Blake, the young master has returned. He asks that you meet him in the garden right away. Is everything okay? Imani asked, concerned by the woman's expression. There was A disagreement at the meeting, very heated from what the driver said. Mrs. Park twisted her hands anxiously. Please go to him. I haven't seen him this upset since his mother died. Imani hurried to the garden, her heart pounding. She found Jae-hyun by the koi pond. His tie loosened, his expression stormy. Jae-hyun, what happened? He turned at the sound of her voice, his face softening slightly. I told them no. No to what? To everything. The CEO position. The succession plan. All of it. He ran a hand through his hair, messing it up in a way that reminded Imani of the night they first met. I told them I wasn't ready to commit to running the company full-time, that I wanted to establish the Korean Cultural Center branches in America first, that I needed time to figure out what kind of leader I wanted to be. How did they take it? About as well as you'd expect. My father accused me of betraying the family legacy. Ji-yeon's father threatened to sell his shares. The other board members just sat there in shock. Jae-hyun laughed without humor. I think they were more surprised that I had opinions than by what those opinions actually were. And what happens now? Imani asked softly. Now we wait. They're in emergency session trying to decide what to do. My father is pushing for them to name him interim CEO while I come to my senses. Jae-hyun reached for her hands. But none of that matters right now. What matters is us. Us. Imani, these past few days have shown me exactly what I want and what I don't want. I don't want to be my father, putting business before people. I don't want to make decisions out of obligation rather than conviction. His eyes were intense as they held hers. And I don't want to lose you. You're not going to lose me, Imani assured him. But I might if I let my father dictate the terms of my life. He'd find a way to separate us, to pressure you until you gave up. I'm stronger than that, Imani said, thinking of her conversation with Nana. I know you are, but why fight a battle we don't need to fight? Jae-hyun took a deep breath. I told the board I'd reconsider the CEO position on one condition, that I could split my time between Seoul and Los Angeles. 3 months here, 3 months there. Imani stared at him in surprise. Can you run a company like that? With the right team in place, yes. Technology makes it possible to lead from anywhere, and it would mean we could build a life in both places. You could finish your studies at UCLA, then maybe teach at Seoul National University. I could develop the cultural centers and gradually take on more responsibility at CO Tech. What did the board say? They thought I was crazy, Jae-hyun admitted with a small smile. But then grandmother called in. She had one of the nurses bring a phone to her room so she could join the meeting remotely, and she supported my proposal. Said it was time for CO Tech to become a truly global company with leadership that understood both Eastern and Western perspectives. She did that for you? For us, Jae-hyun corrected her. She told me later that she saw in you the same strength she saw in my mother, someone who wouldn't let the CO family machine crush their spirit. Imani felt tears welling in her eyes. So what happens now? Now we wait for the board's decision. But whatever they decide, I've made mine. Jae-hyun pulled her close. I choose us, Imani, our future together. Everything else is negotiable. As the sun set over the garden, casting long shadows across the carefully tended landscape, Imani felt something settle inside her, a certainty that had been missing since they arrived in Seoul. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, on their own terms. 3 days later, the Seo family gathered in Mrs. Seo's suite. The elderly woman had asked to see everyone together. Jae-hyun, Imani, Won-tae, and even Ji-yeon, whose father had ultimately decided not to sell his shares after a private conversation with Mrs. Seo. I don't have much time left, Mrs. Seo began, her voice weaker than it had been on Imani's first visit, but her eyes still sharp. So I will be direct. This family has been ruled by duty and obligation for too long. It has cost us much. Love, happiness, connection. Her gaze settled on her son. Won-tae, you lost the love of your life because you couldn't see beyond the company. Don't let your son make the same mistake. Won-tae looked down, unable to meet his mother's eyes. The company needed me. The company would have survived without you for a few hours each day, Mrs. Seo said firmly. Your wife needed you more, but you weren't there. She turned to Jae-hyun. The board has accepted your proposal with conditions. You will need to prove yourself, to show them that your vision for the company is sound. It won't be easy. I know, Jae-hyun acknowledged, but I'm ready for the challenge. Good. Mrs. Seo's gaze shifted to Ji-yeon. Young woman, you have ambition and intelligence, but you've been taught to see marriage as a business transaction. There's more to life than mergers and acquisitions. Ji-yeon looked surprised to be addressed so directly. Mrs. Seo, your father has agreed to appoint you to the board as his representative, Mrs. Seo continued. It's time women had more say in how this company is run. Prove yourself on your own merits, not through who you marry. Finally, Mrs. Seo turned to Imani. Come here, child. Imani approached the bed, kneeling beside it so she was eye level with the elderly woman. You remind me of myself when I was young, Mrs. Seo said softly, before I let this family tame me. Don't make that mistake. Keep your fire. I will, Imani promised. Mrs. Seo reached for a small box on her bedside table. This was my mother's, and her mother's before that. Now it's yours. She pressed the box into Imani's hands. Inside was a beautiful jade pendant on a delicate gold chain. I can't accept this, Imani protested. It should stay in your family. You are family now, Mrs. Seo said simply. Or you will be, when my grandson finally makes good on that proposal. Jae-hyun smiled. We're working on it, grandmother. Work faster, Mrs. Seo advised. I'd like to see at least one wedding before I go. 1 month later, the Seoul University auditorium was packed for the announcement of the new international scholarship program, jointly funded by the SEO Foundation and the Korean Cultural Center. Jae-hyun stood at the podium, speaking confidently in both Korean and English about the importance of cultural exchange and understanding. Language is more than words, he said, his eyes finding Imani in the front row. It's a bridge between worlds, between hearts. My own life has been transformed by someone who took the time to learn not just my language, but my culture, my perspective. In the past month, much had changed. The board had officially approved Jae-hyun's appointment as CEO, with the unusual arrangement of splitting his time between Seoul and Los Angeles. Won-tae had gradually accepted his son's vision for the company's future, though he still occasionally slipped into old patterns of criticism and control. Ji-yeon had surprised everyone by throwing herself into her new role on the board, bringing fresh ideas and a perspective that had been missing in the male-dominated boardroom. She and Imani had reached a tentative truce, not quite friendship, but no longer open hostility. Most significantly, Mrs. Seo had rallied, her doctors puzzled by her improved condition. Though the cancer was still terminal, she had more good days than bad, and had already begun planning for the wedding that would take place in Los Angeles the following spring, with a traditional Korean ceremony to follow in Seoul. After the presentation, as the audience mingled at the reception, Imani found herself standing beside Won-tae, both of them watching Jae-hyun speak animatedly with a group of students. He's different since he met you, Won-tae observed, breaking the awkward silence between them. More confident, more himself. He was always those things, Imani replied. He just needed space to show them. Won-tae nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps. He took a sip of his drink. My wife, Jae-hyun's mother, would have liked you. Coming from Won-tae, this was high praise indeed. Thank you. I wish I could have met her. She was like you. Strong-willed, unimpressed by wealth or status. A hint of regret colored his voice. I didn't appreciate those qualities enough when she was alive. Before Imani could respond, Jae-hyun joined them, slipping his arm around her waist. Everything okay here? Your father was just telling me about your mother, Imani said. A rare occurrence, Jae-hyun noted, looking at his father with surprise. Won-tae cleared his throat. The scholarship program is a good idea. Your mother would have approved. With that, he nodded to them both and moved away to speak with some university officials. That's the closest my father has come to giving us his blessing, Jae-hyun said, watching him go. We'll take it, Imani smiled, leaning into his embrace. Later that evening, they stood on the balcony of Jae-hyun's apartment in the city, looking out at the Seoul skyline glittering below them. In 2 days, they would fly back to Los Angeles for 3 months, dividing their time between the Malibu house and Imani's classes at UCLA, where she had been accepted into the graduate program. Happy? Jae-hyun asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. Very, Imani said, turning in his embrace to face him, though I still can't believe how much has changed in just 2 months. Some things haven't changed, Jae-hyun pointed out. I'm still hopelessly in love with you. Good, Imani laughed, because you're stuck with me now. Your grandmother has basically adopted me. Best decision she ever made, Jae-hyun said, kissing her softly. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the city lights sparkling around them, Imani thought about their unlikely journey. From that first meeting in a Los Angeles restaurant to this moment, building a life that bridged 2 worlds. It wouldn't always be easy. There would be cultural differences to navigate, family tensions to manage, and the challenges of Jae-hyun's dual role in Seoul and Los Angeles. But they had already overcome so much, proving that what they had built together was stronger than the forces trying to pull them apart. "What are you thinking about?" Jae-hyun asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Imani smiled, remembering the words she had spoken to him that first night, when he had flirted with her in Korean, thinking she wouldn't understand. "I was thinking," she said, switching to his language, "that you shouldn't say things like, 'I love you,' unless you're prepared to mean them forever." Jae-hyun's eyes softened with emotion. "I've never meant anything more," he replied, first in Korean, then in English, "in your language, in mine, or in silence." And as he pulled her close for another kiss, Imani knew that some things needed no translation at all. The end.